Hello and good morning. My name is Bianca Simmons with the North Carolina Bar Foundation, and today we have with us Donna Berkelhammer. She will be presenting on today's business entities, the different entities of choosing the right business structure for your company. Thank you, Donna, so much for joining us today. This is going to be a good presentation. We have had a lot of requests about business entities, and Donna is definitely the person to get us there and provide us with that information. I will now turn it over to Donna for more information and also today's introduction. Thank you all.
Thank you, Bianca, and thank you everybody for being here. While I give my introduction, I would like you guys to put in the chat what you think your 2 or 3 greatest risks are for your business or your potential business. So I'm Donna Berkelhammer. I founded Legal Direction in 2015. It is a law firm that works with small and micro businesses on their transactional needs. I have been an attorney since 1995, and now I'm an attorney and a business owner. And I work with people just like you to start your business, grow your business, and sell your business. So Bianca, do we have any answers in the chat?
Nope, not yet.
All
Give it
right.
some time. I do see we have Wendy raised her hand. Wendy, if you could, you can go ahead and put that in the chat, please.
So why are we all here today? We're here because we're business owners or potential business owners, and that's a little risky and it's a little scary to some people, and some people get very overwhelmed by this. But here's this Russian proverb for all of us: he who doesn't take risks doesn't get to drink the champagne. So what does a business attorney do for you guys, with you guys? We're basically like insurance agents. We help you manage risk. If I were going to do this class live, I'd be at the whiteboard and you guys would all be calling out what your risks are. So are we able to?
Yep, I'm updating it now. They
Okay.
were saying they weren't able to actually put their chats,
Okay.
their questions in the chat, so that's what I'm doing, updating it.
All right. So a lot of people are working on a business plan, and the business school way you do that is SWOT: strength, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. What your risks are for your particular business are going to depend on if you have a product business or a service business. They're going to be different that way. So some things you might want to think about are physical risks. Do you have locks on your door? Do you have locks on the filing cabinet with your HR materials in there? Do you have a fire alarm? Do you have a burglary alarm? Do you need to hire security guards? Do you have financial risks? What are your processes for accounts receivable, which is things that people owe you? What are your processes for accounts payable, which is bills you have to pay? Is the same person handling both of those? Is there oversight? Do you have computer and cybersecurity risks? Do you have a firewall? Do you have two-step authentication to sign on to things? Who has access to your bank account? What about records you have to keep? What about quality assurance for your products? Do you have employees? Do you have personnel policies? Do you follow your personnel policies? So the first step in managing your risk is to identify what your risk is, so you know what it is, and have proper steps to control your risk. I can tell you that before you even start with an entity, there are several things you can do to manage your risks. The two in my ballpark are good form contract that will help you manage your risks. You'll know what happens if you go wrong. There will be some kind of limitation of liability, some kind of warranty. So you know your worst case scenario if something goes sideways because it's in your contract. And the other thing is good commercial insurance. That's going to protect you from slip and fall at your premises, from products liability. It could protect you in certain services for your errors and omissions. So that is all very specific to your business. So the
And
way,
Donna,
yes,
oh, some of those people actually answered. Thank you.
okay,
So we have Tamara, she said losing money. Wendy said mental. Sean said financial risk. Tamara also says she's not sure in what direction to go in. She has too many ideas. Christina, in the product manufacturing business, risk from personal injury lawsuits by customers. And then we also have by Peter, risk with public communication, handling royalties, copyrights for clients, including financial and legal assets, IP, and records management.
excellent, guys. So you're already thinking about this. Some of the ways you can manage these risks is to have what I call your kitchen cabinet. And that is some business professionals, an attorney, an accountant, a commercial insurance agent, a commercial banker, a financial planner. Those are the folks you want to have before you need them that already know you, already know your business. But it's also important for entrepreneurs to have other people that are in business in your industry or in other industries and in different phases of business ownership. You know, it's nice to have people that are just starting out because they understand what you're going through, but it's also nice to have people who are more experienced that can give you some guidance and, oh, I've been through that. And there's a lot of ways you can develop this kitchen cabinet. Um, Being in this environment and having access to the Bar Foundation seminars, there are resources for you at the small business technology development centers. Those are at a lot of the community colleges. I'm sorry, those are at a lot of the colleges locally. NC State has one, NC Central has one. I believe Chapel Hill UNC has one. There are law clinics that are open to entrepreneurs. There is a small business center at most of the community colleges. I know the Durham County Library has a lot of resources for entrepreneurs. So there are resources for you to get the help in the specific areas to help you develop an idea, to help you develop best practices, to connect you with intellectual property attorneys. So they're out there and they are very cost effective, if not free. What does the lawyer bring to risk management? I cannot make my screen advance. There we go. What we can do is give you a business structure that can help shield you from personal liability for the liabilities of your business. So this is my arc of different types of entities that a business owner can choose from. It goes from sole proprietor, which has the lease structure, all the way around the arc to the corporation. And I'll go through what all these other letters mean. But you can see at the top, there's partnership.
Donna, that slide is not showing. I do apologize.
Oh, all right. So we've got sole proprietor, joint venture, partnership, LLC, and corporation. And some partnerships give you limited liability and some don't. LLCs and corporations do give you limited liability. Is that showing up?
Nope, I'm not seeing that. We see it over here on the side, but it's not showing on the main screen.
All right. How about that?
Importance of limited liability. Yep, we
Yeah.
got
All
it.
right.
Thank you.
So here's the slide before. Sorry, I was on the wrong screen. I got too much technology over here. So you can see sole proprietors, joint ventures, and partnerships are on one side that does not have limited liability. And then some partnerships, LLCs, and corporations do have limited liability. What is liability? Why is it important to a small business? Let me introduce you to Catherine. She is a great home baker, loves it. That's her hobby. After her kids got out of the house, she got kind of bored and she just started baking and she sent it to her husband at work. And everybody was so crazy about what she was making. And she thought, you know what? I could be a caterer. That's going to be my career now that my kids are out of the house. And so she started throwing parties for her friends. Well, they hired her to cater the parties, and then they told people, and word of mouth, it really grew fast. And so she hired Danny, who was a delivery driver. And I'm sorry, I have a semi truck here. I couldn't find a picture of a van in my stock photos. But if she has Danny, the delivery driver, he can set up and deliver catered goods to people while she was hosting and staffing other parties, and she could do twice the business, and things were booming until, uh-oh, Danny crashed and he hit a school bus. And it's okay. All the kids were safe and nobody was hurt badly, but they were shaken up and some of them had bruises. And the parents were really angry because Danny ran a stop sign because he was looking at his directions and he didn't pay attention. And everybody has emotional damages. And you know what? They sued Catherine because she owns the catering company. But you know what? Catherine started this as a hobby business um, in her kitchen, and then she hired an employee, and she never had commercial insurance, and she never had an entity. And they sued her, and they had to her and her husband had to liquidate their IRA to pay all these claims for all these parents and all these kids because they didn't have an entity and they didn't have proper insurance. And if they had, when she started doing catering at other people's houses, if Catherine had had an LLC and she had an employee and that employee had a wreck, all that would be at risk was the assets of her LLC. And all she would owe personally is whatever her initial capital contribution was to start that LLC. So the limited liability protects your personal assets from the liabilities of your company. Gonna go through these entities a little more slowly now. So first we have the sole proprietor. And as we discussed, this has absolutely no limited liability. This could be your teenager who goes out and starts mowing the neighbor's lawns during the summer. It is any individual that just opens a business for themselves. And the problem with sole proprietor is you are liable for all the debts and liabilities of the company, and all of your assets are potentially at risk. This is taxed as income on your personal income tax return. So there's no separate tax return, and the profits and the losses just pass through to the owner. And anything could be a sole proprietor. People that are doing home parties or, you know, where you sell products and you invite all your friends, that's a sole proprietor. If you're a graphic artist and you're just out there on Fiverr getting gigs, that's a sole proprietor. Anybody who's freelancing, you know, potentially somebody that, you know, one of the businesses that was hot a while ago was the vending machines, and you place vending machines and you fill them. And a lot of people just do that without an entity. You start a band, you know, that's actually a partnership if there's more than one person, sorry. So anything can be a sole proprietor. It's just I set up a business and I've got no structure. That's a sole proprietor, and it can be risky. It could not be risky. I mean, it could be something that if you have a good contract and good insurance, you've really managed your risks and your personal assets aren't very much in danger. I did put joint venture on that first slide. The reason I put that there is some states have a specific joint venture statute and there's regulations for how you can be a joint venture. North Carolina does not have a joint venture statute. So if you're doing business with someone else, if you do nothing except say, we're in business together, let's form a partnership. I mean, let's do business together. You've formed a general partnership. There are no statutory requirements for forming a partnership. So if you are with somebody else and you have the intent to be in business for profit, you have formed a partnership. And you don't actually have to make a profit, you just have to intend to make a profit. The problem with the general partnership is you see these two ladies. We've got the lady on the left who's the sales and marketing person, and you've got the lady on the right who's a landscaper. She's got a commercial greenhouse now, and you guys think it's going to be great. I have really great sales skills. You have really great florist skills. Let's go to business and we're gonna, provide fresh flowers to all the hotels in our town, and come in and change them once a week and take care of them. And so the florist, the flower person, I'm gonna say flower girl, signs a contract and she orders all these really exotic flowers from China, and they're going to send her the bulbs and she's going to grow them, and you're going to have this amazing product that no other hotel has, and it's going to make your business stand out. But the flowers come and the bulbs are rotted, and worse than that, they're filled with insects that are invasive in North Carolina, and your shipment gets stopped at customs and they won't let it in, and all this product is useless and you can't get in, and meanwhile the company you ordered it from is haranguing you and calling you, where's my money, you ordered these bulbs, you ordered these seeds. It's not our fault that they didn't get through customs, you should have done more research. Who's gonna pay them? You know what? Either one of them is equally liable. And if the florist doesn't have very much money because, she's just living on a farm, and the sales and marketing has this great portfolio because she's retired from corporate America and that's how she got all these skills, doesn't matter that she didn't sign the contract. They're partners and they're equally liable for the debts of the general partnership. So what can you do? We're going to pay a lot of money is what we're going to do. You can form an entity. There are certain kinds of partnerships called limited partnerships that you can form, that there's one person or an entity that is the limited partner, the general partner that runs the company. And you can have limited partners that contribute money. This is often a pretty complicated structure, and it's used a lot for real estate investments and property development. And I'm not going to go into that a lot because I don't think it's appropriate to general entrepreneurship. I'm going to focus on the LLC and the corporation. You pick the LLC because it's flexible. It is an entity that you form by filing articles of organization with the North Carolina Secretary of State. it is very common for one or two people businesses. You can see here it's often used for retail. It could be used for any business. There's very few limitations on who can own it, how many owners there are. You form it by filing articles of organization with the Secretary of State. You can have a one-person LLC or multiple member LLC. Member is what you call the owner of an LLC. And by statute, the LLC is run by a manager. This can get a little confusing sometimes because if you have a retail store, the manager of the LLC is not necessarily the same person as the manager of the business. The manager of an LLC is more akin to a director or an officer of a corporation. They're in charge of making sure the LLC is filing its taxes, it's filing annual reports with the Secretary of State, it's making the big decisions for what the LLC is going to do. Are we going into a new market? Are we going to buy a building? And then at the same time, you could hire a manager of the business, a manager of a restaurant, the manager of your store who's an employee. And so sometimes entrepreneurs get confused with what the manager of an LLC is, but they're in charge of the LLC entity itself and the big picture decisions for that entity. And that's statutorily what a manager of an LLC is. Think of it like the president of the company. So you want to name your managers. You can have officers just like a corporation if you want. Some people are more comfortable with those types of arrangements and names. So to form your LLC properly, you're going to file your articles of organization. You're going to get an EIN, or that's the federal tax ID number from the IRS. You can do that online. If you have more than one member of your LLC, you want to have an operating agreement. And this is a document, it doesn't get filed anywhere. It's going to set out the relationship between the owners, what happens if somebody has to get out of the company or wants to get out of the company. The LLC is basically a partnership that has limited liability, and it has very little law, very little statute for how it's run, who's running it, what their liability is, what happens if they want to get out, because it's designed to be a creature of contract. The owners are supposed to have an operating agreement and set forth what the LLC does, how it does it, when it does it, who does it, and they don't really want to get involved at the statutory level. So if you haven't done an operating agreement and there's a dispute among the partners, the statute can't help you. A lawyer can't help you. All we can do is apply for judicial dissolution and split up your company and divide the assets. So my typical operating agreement is going to have, if the owners have to work in the company, what their duties are, how much time they have to commit, what happens if they don't, what happens if somebody dies, becomes disabled, incapacitated, incompetent. What happens if they have to declare bankruptcy? What happens if they're getting divorced and their spouse is trying to get the interest in the company as part of the divorce out of spite? Your operating agreement can contain provisions about all of that. It could talk about how you're going to value the company later in case one of you needs to get out. There's going to be provisions in there. What happens if the owners don't agree and there's a deadlock? How do we break that deadlock? All of that should be in your operating agreement. There is a new requirement for all most new companies, not all, most, does not apply to nonprofits. but the federal government is trying to reduce financial crimes, money laundering, that kind of thing, terrorism. And so most new companies, the owners and the people who are managers or have substantial control have to file a beneficial ownership interest report with, it's called FinCEN, and it's a Department of Treasury agency. So that's a new requirement for proper formation of companies. You want to open a business bank account because you can't commingle. You got to treat your company like it's a different entity from you. You want to get appropriate business insurance. You want an appropriate form contract. LLCs have to file an annual report with the Secretary of State every year after the first year to maintain your limited liability. So this is a little bit, what you have to do is articles of organization, EIN, beneficial ownership interest report, and file with the Secretary of State every year. You're not required by law to have a separate business bank account or insurance or contract. But I think if you want to maintain your limited liability, you should definitely have a business bank account. The LLC, you can have people that are involved in the business, not involved with the business. You can have people that contribute in an idea and other people that contribute money, and they can own the same percentage. You can have silent partners that aren't involved with the running of the business. It's super flexible. You can even have somebody that comes in and invest money in your business, and for the first few years, if the business is losing money, all of those losses can go to them even if they only own half the company. It's super flexible. It's the easiest form of an entity. There's very little requirements to form it. There's very few requirements to keep it current, ongoing, just the Secretary of State annual report every year.
And Donna, we do have two questions from the chat that I feel like are great questions.
Okay.
One is, with mobile food businesses, what can I use for a business address for articles of organization? They are a renter and can't use a residential address.
Okay, I do this. I have a house and I don't want my people showing up at my house for my business, and I work out of home. Go to a UPS store, a package store. I call them a mailbox store, where you can rent a private mailbox. It costs, I don't know, a couple $100 a year, and then that'll count as a street address that you can use with the Secretary of State. You cannot use a PO box for that. So you've got to get a private mailbox. So if you've ever seen an address that has PMB as the suite number, that's a private mailbox, and you can use that for your food truck.
Perfect. Thank you, Donna. And then also someone asked, can you explain form contracts, providing a little bit more details
Oh,
about
sure.
that?
Form contract is your template for your business. So if you have a product, you want maybe a limited warranty, you want to say, especially if you have manufactured products or things that you create for spec, you're going to want to say, here's my quality. If it doesn't meet my quality, here's what you do. You can, I'll repair it or I'll replace it. You've got 90 days to let me know. So you know what your liability is. These can be super generic. They can be super specific, depends on your business. If you have services, for example, you're a graphic designer and you got a client in and you sat with them and you talked to them about their business and what they liked and what their style was, and you came up with 3 different logos for them, and they picked one, and you got their brochure printed with that logo, or their business cards printed with that logo, and they come back to you and they're like, you know what, I don't like it, do it again. Do you have to do it again? depends what, if you have a contract, your contract can say, here's our milestones. I'm going to present you with 3 choices. You're going to sign off on one. You're going to give me a written approval. And if you change your mind after that, I'm going to charge you to reperform my services. So a form contract is your terms and service, your terms and conditions under which you're going to do business. And if you write your contract, you can minimize your risks. You can know where they are. You're going to know if they don't like my services, I'm going to reperform them, or I'm going to refund their money. Or if my part that I manufactured for them breaks, this is what happens. You wouldn't use it for something like a food truck. So if it's applicable to your business, you want to have your own template contract for your goods and services. Does that answer your question? All right. So
Also,
I'm gonna,
someone
oh,
asked, oh,
go ahead.
can an LLC protect me and my personal assets if it's a single member LLC? My product injures someone and the customer claims that I was personally negligent in making my own product. Would a limited liability of an LLC protect me from that claim?
Yes. You don't have personal liability in an LLC unless you were not properly formed. And that's usually more of a issue with a corporation than an LLC. You're not properly capitalized, and that's never been an issue for any company I've ever worked with. Properly capitalized is things like if you own a taxi cab company and you put 2 taxi cabs in each of 100 LLCs, so that if the cab's in an accident, all that's at risk is those 2 taxi cabs. That was fraudulent capitalization in a famous case. You got to be properly run. That means you're not commingling your funds. You've got that separate business bank account. And every check you get for your business, even if they make it out to you personally, you endorse it over, you put it in your business account. If you need gas money, you either have a corporate credit card or you put expense report into yourself and reimburse you because you got gas on while you were doing business work. You want to treat that LLC like it's a completely separate person than you, because that's what limited liability is. That LLC or that corporation is a separate person in the law from the owner, because you've filed your articles and you're maintaining and you're properly running it. For somebody that's manufacturing products, I would definitely recommend you have a written contract with people. And so you've got some legal written protection about what happens if a part fails.
Perfect. That was a great explanation. And one last question, Donna. What is the difference between having a PLLC and a malpractice insurance?
Okay. PLLCs is professional limited liability company, and PC is professional corporation. There is a statute on professional corporations that lists the most crazy esoteric businesses that are required to be a PC or PLLC. I'm getting an echo all of a sudden. There, okay, it's off. So if your profession is listed in the statute and it's medical professionals, accountants, lawyers, engineers, I think land surveyors, occupational therapists, maybe speech and pathology therapists, I think foresters, those are all listed in the statute. If the statute says you have to be a PC or a PLLC, there's an extra step in forming your company. And you've got to go to your licensing board. And it's not every single licensed professional. So I'll be honest with you, I always have to check the statute to see if somebody has to be a PC or PLLC. But you go to your licensing board and you put in an application to form a professional entity. and they give you a certificate that says you're licensed and in good standing and eligible to form this company. And then you take that certificate and you file it with your articles to the Secretary of State. That will protect you from somebody comes to your office and slips and falls, or you got into a dispute with the copy machine and they're suing you for breach of contract. PLLC will protect you from general business liability, but malpractice on a professional level is always personal to the practitioner, and your LLC or your corporation will not shield you from personal negligence. You would not have personal negligence if you had an LLC and you're manufacturing products. That's just business, but providing a professional service, that you're liable for doing that badly, and that's why you have malpractice insurance, and you need both. Okay. So
And I see some
corporate,
Q and
oh,
A. Oh, I'm so
okay.
sorry, Donna. I
Keep
see some
going,
Q and
keep
A
going.
coming in. Okay, I just wanted to double check. I didn't
Yeah.
know if you wanted me to stop or wait it. So, Sean followed up. He said, "So if I pay myself through payroll, but I also write a business check for any extra expenses I have, is he doing that correctly?"
Yes, because you're writing the check from the business to yourself. And you may
Perfect.
want some kind of form to just say what you're paying for, so there's a record of why you wrote yourself that check. And it's a reimbursement and not income, so you're not paying taxes on that personally. So document.
Got it. Also, what kind of business entity is a falls prevention service company?
I have no idea. I don't know what that is. I
And
mean,
then the
if you're
last
an
question.
occupational therapist, I think you need a PLLC for that. If you have questions after, I'll put my email. You can email me and we can figure it out. If it's consulting, you could just be an LLC, and it's a really fine line. Most of my clients that are licensed professionals that are offering some kind of coaching or counseling that's very similar to their profession, we just do a professional company, and then you don't have to offer just professional services under that, but that gives you more coverage.
Perfect. And to follow up, they said it installs grab bar stub to shower conversions and chairlifts.
Yeah, that's I think that's just like a construction company. You just need general commercial liability insurance, and
Perfect.
would be a regular LLC or corporation.
All right. And Peter, as for home-based virtual service business, can you start as a sole proprietary and change to an LLC later when the business starts growing, or would it be better to start as an LLC right away?
So go through the risk analysis, and you're working at home, people aren't coming to your home, so you don't have to worry about a client tripping and falling. um what kind of services are you providing? Can you get insurance to cover that? Do you have any kind of specialized equipment in your home that if your home had a flood or a fire, um, would your homeowner's insurance cover it because it's a business? Go through all of that. It's very common when you're starting out that you can be a sole proprietor. I would have definitely a written contract with your clients that, what happens if they're not happy with your services, what's the remedy, so that your worst case scenario. And it might be you refund half their fee or all their fee, or reperform the services or something. And just make sure your risks are covered. And I was going to go over this at the end, but I could do it now. In my mind, there are 3 reasons to actually form your entity at this moment in time. One of them is you've got a lot of risk. So if you're a food business or you're working with kids, you definitely want an entity. Those are very risky. if so, your high risk business form a entity. If you are making so much money, you would get a tax break from being an entity, and that's a question for your accountant. That's a good time to form an entity. And then in my mind, the third reason is a marketing reason. If you think it would be more beneficial to market yourself as an LLC or a company, instead of just you individually, that's a valid reason for forming an entity. We good?
Yep. Oh, nope. Just got one more.
Okay.
Sean just says, so to be clear, if I go through ADP payroll to pay myself, and that includes paying for my bills, I do have extra expenses. So I write myself a check out of my business account to pay those expenses. This is not included in my payroll. Just to be clear, do I need to document my expenses when I write that check, although it's not tax deductible?
I would definitely document those expenses to show why you're writing yourself a check, because otherwise if you ever get audited, the tax folks are going to say, oh, well, he was writing himself a check. That's extra shareholder dividend or LLC distribution, and that's taxable income to you. Rather than if it's a true business expense, it's most likely deductible. But talk to your accountant, but document. Don't just be writing yourself checks out of the business, because it's going to be
Perfect.
assumed to be extra income.
All right.
All right.
We are all clear, Donna.
All
Thank
right.
you.
I'm going to move to corporations. Corporation is the hardest entity to form and to maintain. It's very precise, it's very regimented, it's not very flexible. Basically, you contribute money, capital, and your percentage of the total capital contribution is your percentage of the company. And LLC is so flexible. I could give $10 and somebody could give $100, and we could decide we're 50-50 partners. LLC doesn't care. LLC, one person can contribute an idea or a logo or a product, and the other person can contribute all the money. We don't care what the relative values of that. They could be 50-50 owners. LLC, how much money did you give? That's your percentage of the company. Every person that is an owner of the company has a say almost always in the management of the company. You have to vote on major issues of the company. You elect directors, and the directors elect officers. And if you're confused about who you are and what you're doing, you would not be alone. If you think about something like the Coca-Cola Company, you are a shareholder, you bought shares in Coke because you think they're a profitable company, they're going to pay you dividends, return on your investment. You're a shareholder, you're owner. Your main job as a shareholder of a publicly traded company is to elect the board of directors. The board of directors decides on, are we going to Singapore this year? Are we offering benefits to same-sex couples? What's our retirement plan look like? How many employees do we have? Are we going to close this plant? Are we going to adopt new Coke? Are we changing our logo? Okay, let's make all these decisions. And then we say, okay, Mr. President and officers, we're delegating this decision. You're going to implement it. So there's three very different levels of jobs. You own the company, you make policy decisions for the company, you implement the policy decisions for the company. In most small businesses, that is me, myself, and I, and you never know which hat you're wearing. And a lot of times it honestly doesn't matter, but sometimes it does. So it's very, very formal. It's very, very structured. Sorry. And it can be difficult to figure out when you're on what page. I'm sorry, I am struggling with the technology today. I'll get into why you would pick a corporation over an LLC on the next slide. So to form your corporation, you're going to file articles of incorporation. I'll tell you the articles either of incorporation or organization are pretty bare bones. It's what's the name of the company? Who's filing this document? Are you filing it because you're one of the owners, or are you just organizing it for someone else? That would be me. I'm an organizer and incorporator only because I'm just filing these for you. You need to list a registered agent, which is a person that the state can contact if there's a problem with the company. You'll get notices from the Secretary of State, you'll get notices from the tax folks. And if somebody needs to give an official notice to your entity, they send it to the registered agent. It could be anybody who resides in North Carolina that is 18 years of age or older. Most of my clients serve as their own registered agent. You can hire companies to do that for you. You can hire attorneys to do that for you. If you're going to be this entity, they need an actual person to get in touch with. And then it'll ask you if you have a principal place of business. You don't need to put one at the beginning. If you don't have one, you can use that private mailbox for that. And then it'll ask you to name any officers that you want to list. And that's it. That's all you have to put on there. They're really bare bones. So for the LLC, we did articles of incorporation, EIN, and then we skipped right down to beneficial ownership interest report. You can see for the corporation, there's a lot more steps. You have to hold an organizational meeting to elect your directors and officers. You have to issue shares. You need stock certificates. You have to adopt bylaws. If you have more than one owner, just like in the LLC has the operating agreement that talks about what happens on, somebody needs to leave or wants to leave and how do you value it if you need to buy them out. That's in a shareholders agreement. Again, if you don't have one, there's very little the law can do to help two disputing owners of a corporation. So those are all steps that are specific to a corporation. If you don't have your organizational meeting, issue shares, adopt bylaws, you're not properly formed and you may not get limited liability. The number of clients I have that haven't done this is enough that I have a cleanup form for that. You also have to have annual meetings of shareholders and annual meetings of directors in the corporate statute. Those are required. An astounding number of corporations never do that, and that again might affect your limited liability. So when I tell you why that LLC is easier to form and maintain, this is why. None of this is hard. It's just more hoops you got to be aware of and jump through and keep current. You got to file your beneficial ownership interest report. You have to get your business bank account, your insurance, your form contract, and then you also have to file that annual report with the Secretary of State. There is a thing called an S Corp that mystifies a lot of people. What that is, so I told you, sole proprietor, when you pay your taxes, you just have an income statement, how much profits, how much losses. That's my income. I report that on a schedule on my personal income tax. LLC is the same thing. If it's a single owner, you just do that Schedule C, flows through right to your personal tax return. You don't have to file anything at the company level with the IRS. No tax return for the company. If the LLC is owned by two or more people, it is a partnership. So the entity files an informational tax return to the IRS, but doesn't pay any taxes. And then it issues a K-1 to the owners, and you put that on your personal income tax statement. And just like that Schedule C, you're going to pay your income tax from your company on your personal income tax. So sole proprietor, single member LLC, all you do is a schedule on your personal income taxes. If you have a partnership, you file an informational return, but you don't file any income taxes for the company, and you file your personal income tax on your income tax return on your 1040. If you have a corporation, that's the first entity we've talked about that is required to pay taxes at the corporate level. So whatever your profits are for your corporation, you file an income tax return and you pay income tax on your profits. And then, we talked about if you are, you want to invest in a company, you buy shares in Coca-Cola because they're going to pay you a dividend. Well, that dividend is income to you and you pay income taxes on it. Same thing with your small business. If you're a corporation, you have paid taxes on the corporate level and you can pay yourself a salary and you pay income tax on that. But if you have money left over, you can also pay yourself a dividend, just like if you had shares in Coca-Cola, and that's your return on investment and it's taxed at a capital gains rate and it's less. But you're paying taxes kind of twice on the same money because that money was profits of the corporation and it got taxed. And then it goes down to you as a dividend and you're getting taxed again. That's called double taxation, and that's one of the main disadvantages of a regular corporation. We call that a C corporation because it's Section C of that particular place in the tax code. So what a lot of small businesses do is they say, okay, I want to be a corporation because I've got 10 people involved and I want it to be very structured, or my accountant says I need to be a corporation for these reasons. But I really don't want to pay taxes twice. Is there anything I can do? Sometimes, yes. Sometimes you can do what we call elect S status, which instead of being in section C of the tax code, you're in section S of that particular section. And what that says is all the owners of the corporation are going to be taxed like partners. So the corporation is going to file a tax return and it's going to be informational. And then all the owners are also going to get a K-1 and they're going to pay their taxes at the person level, not at the company level and the personal level. So what you are is a corporation that has flow through taxation. So the corporation is not paying income taxes, just the owners are. So that's what a S corporation is. Questions? Because I know this is really tough stuff.
Yes. So Farah asks, for an LLC, what if after filing articles of organization, my agent at some point moves and their address changes? Is there a way to update their address, or how do I approach that?
There are forms at the Secretary of State to change well, first of all, when you do your annual report every year, you're going to confirm your principal place of business, you're going to confirm your registered agent, you're going to confirm your registered address. So you can always change it when you file your annual report. And that's the easiest way to do it. But if somebody moves or you change your agent, there's a form to change your registered agent or registered address. And it's like $5. And you can, I think, file it online with the wizard.
Perfect. Thank you, Donna. And Marina said, does double taxation apply to LLC tax as C Corp?
LLC cannot be taxed as a C Corp. It could be taxed as an S Corp, which you would only do if your accountant says you're making a lot of money and you need to be taxed as a corporation. But that would make you an S Corp, and you would do an informational return, but you would still just pay at the person level, not the company level.
Perfect. And her follow-up was, does a single member LLC tax as S Corp is that considered double taxation?
No. Be aware if you are an LLC that is taxing as an S Corp. S Corps have a lot of regulations as to who can be an owner. So for the most part, only a natural actual person can own S Corp stock. So you can't have an LLC or a different corporation be the owner of a S Corp. It has to be an actual person, except in very limited circumstances. It can only have up to 100 owners, and the owners either have to be a US citizen or a green card holder. So if you are an LLC and you elect S status, all those regulations are now going to apply to your LLC. And it also has some repercussions for what you can do for estate planning. Again, because a lot of times when you do estate planning, you're going to put your LLC into a trust. You can't do that if your LLC is an S corp. And I ran into that recently with owners that had no clue what was going on. So it's tax wise, it makes a lot of sense to do it. Just be aware there's a lot that comes with that beyond you get tax savings.
The follow-up was, so if you are undocumented, you cannot own an S Corp LLC?
Correct. No, you can't own an S corp, whether it's a corporation or an LLC. An LLC could be taxed as a S corp, and a corporation can be taxed as a S corp. If you are undocumented, you can't do either one of those. You have to just be a plain old LLC or a plain old regular corporation with double taxation.
Perfect. We do have two more questions. What is an
Okay.
LLP, and why would you choose an LLP instead of an LLC?
LLP is limited liability partnership, and that's what we did before we had LLCs. It's I haven't done one in forever. Excuse me. It's going to be a partnership where the partners have limited liability separate from the liability of the partnership, and you would create a limited liability partnership agreement that had whatever rights and obligations all the partners had. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just kind of fallen into disfavor since we have the LLC statute, and that's easier to work with.
Perfect. And Marina, she wanted to follow up on the undocumented owner. She wanted to know if you can provide just a little bit more insight on that and like what are the repercussions?
You would just lose the tax value of the S election if you're not eligible to be an S shareholder. So it would just be more taxes that you weren't prepared for because you thought you were going to be a S corp. It's the same as if you had 101 shareholders and you're only allowed to have 100. You weren't eligible to be an S corporation, so you're going to be taxed as whatever you would have been without the election.
Perfect. And Sean asks, how does retirement work for small businesses?
You can have different retirement accounts for retirement savings. Like if you work at a regular company, sometimes they'll offer a 401k, which gives you the ability to invest pre-tax dollars for retirement savings. There are programs like that for small businesses. And then otherwise, you need to make arrangements to either sell your business to someone as a transition plan or just to shut it down and close it. Did that answer your question?
Yes, it did.
Okay.
And we have two more questions.
Okay.
Why would you not let me see. Why would you not become an S corp instead of a C corp to avoid double taxation?
There are first of all, if you don't qualify to be an S corp, you can't be an S corp. Most people do elect S status, and I can't give you an example because it's an accounting thing, but there are some times when the accountant tells my clients they should not be an S corp. But it's not a legal thing, it's a tax thing.
Perfect. And I'm so sorry, two more questions.
It's all good.
Tamara stated she started an LLC on LegalZoom a while ago, but she wasn't able to pay the fee right away. Will it still be up or can she start fresh?
It's probably still up. You can go to the North Carolina Secretary of State, and it's very easy to, I'm assuming you're talking about your annual report. Once you're formed, they'll give you some grace to miss an annual report. It should be up there. You should be able to file it. There's no penalty for filing it late. After some period of time, and I can't tell you what it is because it's not specific, they will do an administrative dissolution of your company if you haven't paid. If you do that, it's more expensive and more steps to reinstate, and it might be easier to start over. You're going to need to pick a slightly different name, or you could reinstate it, just whatever you want.
Perfect. And Elizabeth asked, do you have to operate different being a LLC tax as a S corp, or is it still following LLC operations?
What do you mean by LLC operations? I can tell you, you're still signing things as a manager of an LLC, but everything you do tax-wise is as a S corporation. I find an LLC taxed as a S corp very difficult for small people to get their head around. When do I use LLC language? When do I use corporation language? So I typically recommend, if you're in that very good problem to have where you're making so much money you need to be a S corp, we just convert your whole entity from a LLC to a corporation because it's just easier on your head to be one thing. If you need to follow up with me later, we can go into more detail.
Perfect. Yep. And she was asking if she was a single member LLC.
It doesn't matter whether you're multi-member. I mean, you don't have to worry about bringing in other partners as much with the LLC. That's a single person and what that means. Just email me later. We can talk about it. It's, I think, just too specific for right now. So how do you decide S corp or LLC? Number one, tax considerations. Anecdotally, since the last time there was an overhaul of the tax code, there has not been a lot of accountants saying you absolutely have to be one or the other. It's coming down more, you could be either one, and I always dip toward LLC. But sometimes your accountant will take a look at your whole situation and say you really need to start off as a S corp. So we defer to the accountant. As we talked about, your immigration status is going to matter. You may not be eligible to be an S corp. How is the company going to be managed? If there are a lot of people involved in the company as owners and you want a more streamlined process, a corporation might be better for you. You might have a very detailed operating agreement. You might have people that own non-voting shares of your company, and some are voting, some are non-voting. That's something we could talk about. You know, how much formality do you want? As we went over, the LLC is very flexible. The corporation is not. And when you're starting up, most people like that flexibility. And then financing used to really tilt toward be a corporation. The banks didn't really understand LLCs. They didn't want to lend as much to LLCs. I'm not seeing that at all anymore. You know, that's really changed in the last 10 years. But, you know, depending on what your end game is and what your financing is, you may want to start as a corporation. So I would just say your next steps are evaluate your risk, evaluate how much formality you can deal with, how many hoops you want to jump through. Make sure you are operating so that your LLC or your corporation is a separate entity from you. You're not commingling. And have fun. I mean, you're doing this because you're running your business and it's amazing. So I'm happy to stay as for, you know, another few minutes if people want to ask more questions, but I know this was an hour-long seminar. I think we ran over a little.
We did, but it was so informative. Thank you so much, Donna. I was even learning some information that I never knew. It is so true. You learn something new every day. We did have a question. What is the new form we have to file for forming an LLC now? I was told I need to get a lawyer to help with filing with that.
Okay, is our last seminar on the website, Bianca, on corporate
Yep.
transparency. All right, there is
And
a
I did, I put
yeah.
a link up there for everyone to access it.
So what they're talking about is the Corporate Transparency Act, which is, believe it or not, the United States is one of the largest havens for tax fraud and money laundering and shell companies, because until January, we didn't have a federal database where you had to list all the owners of companies, all the people that substantially control it, and the lawyers and the accountants that are working in it. And so it was very hard for them to find these pockets of shady people that keep filing all these like multi-layer international shell companies where you can't figure out who the actual owner is. So now all of us have to register our companies with the Department of Treasury, and the act is called the Corporate Transparency Act. What you have to file is called a beneficial ownership interest report, and you can do it yourself. Just search BOIR filing, and it's federal government bureaucracy, so it might be hard for you guys to do. I found it not terrible as a government database, and that's a big asterisk as a government database. It's going to ask you, and for a single member LLC or corporation, it's what's the name of the company, what's your EIN, who formed it. If you formed it yourself, you are the company applicant. If you had somebody else form it for you, they're probably going to give you, it's called their FinCEN number. And then it's going to ask you who owns 25% or more, and then who has substantial control. So those would be, if you're a manager of your own LLC or president of your own corporation, that's you. If you're a one-shot deal, you're everything. You're the owner, you're the applicant, you're the substantial control, and you just put in your name, address, and you have to give either a driver's license or a passport. And you file that, and you only have to change it if the company name changes, if the address changes, if your address on your driver's license changes, those kinds of things. Could potentially be a one-time filing. But that's what they're talking about. And I do provide those services for people. A lot of attorneys don't. So we can talk about that more after if you want to email me. But look at it yourself, see if you can do it. I'm a big proponent of self-help.
And Delane, she also followed up with, what about married couples filing LLC? Also, driving license change. Oh, I will make sure I provide that. Her email address is also up on the screen. And she said driving license change as in renewal.
Not renewal name, if the address changes. Or if for some reason you get a different driver's license in a different state and the number changes, well, your address would change too. So
And I was able to put Donna's email address in the chat. It is Donna, DONNA, at thelegaldirection.com. Her phone number is also 919-980-5520. And I'll give it one more minute just in case we have any other questions. Oh, she asked Donna about married couple LLCs.
what about them? Like, you can do it.
Um,
I would still have an operating agreement. I mean, nobody gets married thinking they're going to get divorced, but it happens. Nobody goes into business together thinking they're going to split up. It happens. With married couples, I usually try to do an LLC so that we agree up front if there needs to be one or the other that needs to end up with the company, and what the valuation would be and how you would buy out. Because sometimes, like, of the couple has the skills that the business is, and the other person's providing support. So it makes sense for the person with the skills to end up with the company and the other person to get bought out if there's a divorce or you're whatever. You can own it. Different accountants treat it differently. I've seen some accountants treat a married couple as a single member LLC, and I've seen some accountants treat it as a partnership, and I don't know why they do it differently.
Oh, wow. And she was asking, also in regard to the BOI filing for married couples, is there anything different?
No, you would just have two beneficial owners.
Perfect. And the last question is from Amanda. Can you easily change the business structure from a DBA sole proprietorship to an LLC? And will the EIN be the same if you do this?
You're not changing it, you're just forming an LLC, and if you have assets in the company, you're going to contribute them from yourself to the LLC. But it will be a new EIN because it's a new person under the law. That's what's going to give you the limited liability. If you want to switch from an LLC to a S Corp, that's really easy, and you do keep your EIN. There are usually significant tax penalties to switch from a corporation back to an LLC.
Right, perfect. And Donna, thank you so much today for all the great information that you shared. It has truly been amazing. I will also like to
Okay.
thank everyone for attending and participating. You really all had some good questions. Great engagement today for today's webinar. I cannot wait and look forward to the next one. This webinar will be available within a week on our website at ncbarfoundation.org. I would like to also thank our program partners, Mount BizWorks in Asheville, Prospera, and Climb in Charlotte, and the small business hubs at the Fayetteville State University, East Carolina University, and also a big thank you to the Small Business Center for sharing this webinar across you guys' campuses. Also, if you have any questions or you need additional information, please reach out to me by email at foundation@ncbar.org or bsimmons@ncbar.org. Thank you all again for attending and have a great day.